Of all the mysteries surrounding Monkey D. Garp, the biggest and most difficult question remains, why did Garp, a man who despises the celestial dragons, team up with Roger to protect those very same people at God Valley? This event is the foundation of his Hero of the Marines title, but it's also the biggest moral stain on his life. Why did he make a choice that seemed to go against everything his conscience stood for? It's all because of Imu Sama, the figure behind everything who holds absolute authority in the world government, was present at God Valley. And not only was Imu Sama present, but they may have used a form of dark sorcery, an ability far beyond normal comprehension, to turn Rocks D Xebec into a true demon, of being completely manipulated and no longer in control of himself. According to this, Rocks was no longer just a rebel trying to take over the world. He was being manipulated, pushed past the brink of humanity, and turned into a threat that surpassed the government or even the celestial dragons. In that situation, Garp, the defender of what's right, was forced to make an impossible choice: cooperate with Roger to stop a catastrophe greater than all others. And in that desperate battle, protecting the celestial dragons became the lesser evil, a painful but necessary moral compromise. This could explain why Garp always avoids talking about God Valley. Not because he's ashamed of working with a pirate, but because he witnessed something so horrific that even he couldn't accept it. An event that forced him to betray his own moral code to save the world from a deeper, darker calamity. If this theory is true, then Garp is not a man of compromise, but a man who shouldered a moral burden that no one else dared to carry. A hero, but also the gatekeeper of the One Piece world's darkest secrets. And that is why he is both revered and tormented, not just by the world, but by his own conscience. To sum it all up, Monkey D. Garp is a living paradox in the gray world of One Piece. In terms of strength, he stands as the absolute pinnacle of non-pirate forces, surpassing most legends like Big Mom and Kaido, and even making Rocks and Roger wary. He needs no devil fruit, no fancy title. A single galaxy impact is enough to make an entire generation of Yonko take a step back. However, his physical strength is matched by an incredibly complex moral puzzle. Garp hates the corruption of the elites and despises the tyranny of the celestial dragons, yet paradoxically, he once stood on their side. Not out of blind loyalty, but perhaps because he's betting on a long-term plan, where Dragon and Shanks destroy the old ruling class, while the new generation of Marines he's training rebuilds a new order where justice can no longer be manipulated. And all these contradictions seem to revolve around a single focal point: God Valley. When the curtain is finally pulled back on what happened there, on Imu's involvement, and on the reason Garp was forced to join hands with Roger, we might see the man named Garp in a completely new light. Not just a marine hero, Garp might be the one who quietly laid the foundation for a new era silently, conflictedly, but also in a profoundly human way. And perhaps it's this very complexity that makes Garp the most brilliantly written character in all of One Piece. The sword theory and the next generation strategy. After the bitter defeat at Marineford and the death of Ace, Garp was no longer the frontline fist of the Marines. Instead, he quietly receded into the background, but he was by no means retired. It's possible that Garp is the secret mastermind behind the Organization Sword, an undercover force within the Marines with a reformist ideology, operating under the principle of fixing the system from the inside rather than overthrowing it entirely like the Revolutionary Army. Garp has placed his faith in a new generation: Kobe, Helmeppo, Smoker, and Kuzan, individuals he either directly trained or inspired. This is a class of Marines unbound by the slave-like mentality towards the celestial dragons, instead forged in the image of an ideal, an independent justice, one that dares to question and act according to its own conscience. But Garp understands that raising a new generation isn't enough if the roots of the system, the celestial dragons, and the holy knights remain rotten. That's why Garp might be playing an incredibly bold, two-pronged gamble, placing his trust into individuals outside the Marines, Dragon and Shanks, who have the power to end the old ruling class. clearing the path for a new era that the forces of Sword can then manage and protect. This theory isn't without evidence. Garp, who constantly claims to hate pirates, has never once tried to capture Shanks, even when they were both in Fuchsia Village where Luffy grew up. This is extremely unusual, as Shanks was the one who inspired Luffy to become a pirate, the very thing Garp openly opposed. If Garp truly saw Shanks as a threat, he would have acted long ago. Instead, he let him be. In the God Valley flashback, it was revealed that Garp's son, Dragon, once saved Shanks' life. This act not only saved Shanks from captivity, but also opens the possibility of a hidden connection between 3 generations, Garp, Dragon, and Shanks. Perhaps that moment made Garp realize that Shanks wasn't like Roger, not a harbinger of chaotic freedom, but an ideal pirate with reason, morality, and a goal greater than treasure. Garp knows he can't take down the system alone. But if he trains an army to keep the peace after the war, while Dragon and Shanks shatter the current ruling class, the 3 of them would form a 3-pronged plan leading to a new age. An age where the new Marines are no longer a tool to protect tyrants, but a force of reconciliation between good and freedom, a world where good pirates are respected, the government is reformed, and the ideology of class discrimination is broken. Why do so many factions still trust Garp? In the world of One Piece, where loyalty to ideals is often swept into the vortex of power, it's rare for one person to be trusted and respected by all factions: Marines, pirates, and revolutionaries. Yet, Monkey D. Garp is that rare exception. From Rocks D Xebec, who wanted to overthrow the world, to the legendary pirate King Garp D. Roger, to the revolutionary leader Dragon, and all the way to Luffy, the symbol of the new age of freedom, they all recognize Garp's true character. That respect doesn't come from his strength or his title, it comes from his moral backbone and a personality as direct as his punch. Despite being a Marine hero, Garp never bowed to tyranny, nor did he sell out his personal beliefs for fame. The clearest proof comes from Dragon himself, who understands the rotten nature of the celestial dragons and the world government better than anyone. Dragon, the man considered the system's greatest threat, entrusted his only son, Monkey D. Luffy, to be raised by Garp. That wasn't a concession, it was an affirmation of absolute faith in his father's character, believing Garp would teach Luffy what was right, unswayed by a warped sense of justice. Similarly, the relationship between Garp and Roger was never one of personal hatred. They clashed because of conflicting ideals. Garp represented order and responsibility, while Roger pursued absolute freedom. Garp didn't hate Roger, he hated the consequences of Roger's philosophy, which led to countless pirates using freedom as an excuse to spread chaos. And because they understood each other to their very core, Roger entrusted Ace to Garp Chapter 551, an act reserved for someone he considered a friend, not an enemy. In the end, Garp is someone who can stand in the middle of all factions without being consumed by any of them. He's not perfect, but it's that imperfection, combined with his unwavering stance and genuine character, that makes him a rare moral pillar in the chaotic world of One Piece. And maybe that's why everyone trusts Garp, no matter where they stand on the board. Garp's stance, relationships, and reputation. One of the most interesting things about Monkey D. Garp is the conflict between his rebellious ideology and his central position in the very system he despises. Despite wearing the title of Marine Hero, Garp has never hesitated to show his contempt for the top brass of the world government, the ones who truly pull the strings of this corrupt machine of power. In Chapter 1158, a conversation between Rocks and another reveals that Garp has long held a dissatisfied view of the ruling class, showing his rejection of top-down authority. Garp doesn't worship power, he doesn't kneel to the celestial dragons, he even mocks them. The running gag of him making fun of bald people, from enemies to his own students, may seem like a joke, but it showcases his signature personality. Unafraid of anyone and respectful of no authority. However, what's remarkable is that even though he doesn't legitimize their power, Garp is still deeply respected by many influential figures. From Sengoku, who fought alongside him in many battles, to Tsuru, one of the most veteran strategists in the Marines, both hold absolute respect for Garp. Kobe, the very symbol of a new, idealistic generation of Marines, looks to Garp as his guiding mentor. Smoker, a man always skeptical of the world's justice, chose to follow the path of independent justice that Garp represents. And most notably, Kuzan, even after leaving the Marines to join Blackbeard, is still spoken of as Garp's student, a man whose rebellious spirit was forged within the system by Garp himself. This shows that Garp is no mere soldier, he's a role model, imperfect but real. And most importantly, he dares to hold on to his personal beliefs within a deeply conflicted organization, Ace. He's son of the pirate king Garp D. Roger. Garp was entrusted by Roger himself to raise the boy who bore no sin. And Garp kept his promise. He raised Ace as his own flesh and blood, defying the world's prejudice and the government's pressure. He taught him, disciplined him, even pushed him, all with one goal in mind: to live a life where he wouldn't be hunted down like his father. But then, at Marineford, when Ace was led to the execution stand, Garp was forced to choose between his duty as a father and his obligation as a guardian of justice. In that moment, Garp broke. If Sengoku hadn't held him back, he might have killed Akainu on the spot, not out of loyalty to a pirate, but because he had failed in his role as a father, as the man who raised him. That pain was profound enough to make him step down from the front lines after the war, retreating to the background to make way for a new generation in whom he placed his faith. All of this shows that Garp is not perfect, but it's this very imperfection that earns him the respect of pirates, Marines, and revolutionaries alike. He doesn't change the world with slogans, he changes it by living his contradictory yet steadfast life, paving the way for those who come after him to go even further. And that is why, in the divided world of One Piece, Garp remains a moral anchor for all sides. And now, thanks for watching the whole video and joining me on this journey to analyze a character as complex as Garp. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. I always appreciate all the comments, feedback, and theories from the community, so leave your thoughts down below. See you next time. Bye-bye.